Hello everyone, this is Sid and welcome back to Cineculture. So, Godzilla X Kong is out in theaters right now, and I've already put out a review for it. You can check it out right here. So, I decided to rank all of the five Monsterverse films that have come out so far. I've yet to watch the Monarch TV show, so I'm keeping that aside and just ranking the five films here. So, let's get started. So, before we get into this, I just wanted to let you know this is my personal ranking. I know everyone has a separate ranking of the Monsterverse films, so I would love to have a discussion about that in the comments down below. Do tell me your thoughts about the new film as well as the rest of the Monsterverse, as well as what your ranking would be. So, with that, let's get started. In last place, I would put Godzilla vs. Kong. Now, do not get me wrong. I love the action in this film. As the Godzilla versus Kong action is some of the best action in the MonsterVerse, especially the Hong Kong battle. I love the way it is visualized, the cinematography. I like that we got 3 rounds of Godzilla versus Kong, and I loved that we focused more on Kong's journey and the discovery of the Hollow Earth. The visuals were breathtaking, and I liked that they dived a little bit into Kong's lore, his backstory. However, the film has a terrible pace. It drags a lot, especially in the first half. This probably has the worst human characters and storyline out of all the Monsterverse films. I was falling asleep in the first half, and I think the problem is that there's too much going on at the same time. You have Godzilla going berserk, wreaking havoc. You have Kong over here, him finding a new home. The introduction to the Hollow Earth. You have Serizawa's son. You have this Apex Corporation. Then you have Mecha Godzilla thrown into the mix. It just feels too convoluted. A lot of stuff going on at the same time. They had easily 3 movies worth of content here, but they stuffed all of that into one film. Next up, Godzilla X Kong. Now, I loved that this film focused more on Kong. We got to explore more of his story. He has a proper arc over here, and his relationship with Suko is at the heart of the film. Suko is a great addition to the Monsterverse. I loved their bond it develops over the film. This is the first film to focus mostly on the Titans, and it is interesting to see a lot of different Titans interact, especially Godzilla and Kong when they do interact in the final half of the film. It's great. There is some great Titan action thrown in, especially in the climax. The entire climax battle was breathtaking. Adding to that, the visuals and the cinematography was great. The Hollow Earth, there we explored the Hollow Earth more in this film, and I loved exploring this new tribe of apes that Kong can now lead. He actually becomes King Kong by the end of the film. But the main issue I have with this film is that there is once again a huge presence of a human storyline, which is unnecessary. The characters are very bland and they are just there for exposition, and the entire first half drags because of that. Godzilla feels like an afterthought in the film. He hardly has a presence. It's like a cameo appearance. I wish Godzilla got more to do in the film. Also, Scar King, in my opinion, was a pretty underwhelming villain. Out of all the villains we have gotten in the Monsterverse, he was the most underwhelming. And it doesn't help that the film takes too long to get into the main storyline. We aren't introduced to the villain until like 60% of the film is over. In third place, Godzilla 2014. Now, this was the first film in the Monsterverse, and I would say it does a great job setting up the franchise. The Titans and Monarch are established really well. Since the film focuses almost completely on the human characters, we get more of the mystery of where these titans are coming from and what they are. And since we are looking at them from the human perspective, when they do appear on screen, we feel the threat. This is probably the film where the threat of these titans feels the most imposing. Like you see Godzilla and the Mutos, they are fighting, but alongside that, we see the destruction that their fight is causing, and we see the impact that has on the human lives. We see on the news that there are thousands missing. We see survivors gathered inside a stadium. The threat of the Titans feels actually impactful over here, more than any other film in the Monsterverse. Adding to this, the visuals and the cinematography are spectacular, especially in the Halo jump. I would say that is one of the best sequences in the entire Monsterverse. Seeing the contrast of the red smoke in the black sky, and then you see Godzilla and the Mutos fighting in the background. It's great. It gave me goosebumps when I first saw it. Also, I'm probably one of the few people who actually like the idea of keeping Godzilla hidden through most of the film, because that just adds to the intrigue of the character, and it makes it even more spectacular when he actually does something. Like the first time he releases his atomic breath, it's actually a grand scene. However, like every other film in the Monsterverse, this has the same problem of the human characters being very underwhelming, where they feel very much caricaturish and boring. Especially the lead character, Aaron Taylor Johnson's character, he doesn't have anything interesting about his personality. The only interesting character in the film, Brian Cranston's character, he's just killed off in the first 20 minutes. And then we follow this team of soldiers who have no personality, nothing. And even though I like the idea of keeping Godzilla and his feats under wraps for most of the film, there is still very less Godzilla in a film titled after the character. He takes too long to show up, and that is probably because the pacing is very off. The film drags at times, and I personally feel this could have been a way shorter film. Now, in second place, I would place Kong Skull Island. This film has probably the best human characters out of all the films. They are charismatic and entertaining to watch, especially Samuel L. Jackson. He plays this army colonel with this charisma, like this mania in him. He's out for revenge, and he sees Kong as his personal enemy. I loved that, and I loved how they added this allegory to the war, the Vietnam War, by throwing in John C. Reilly's character. I loved his story, the way they implemented it in the film, and how they connected him to the Lord of Skull Island. Speaking of Skull Island, some of my favorite moments of the film were when the characters were on Skull Island exploring the harsh wildlife, like exploring the nature. There is some great cinematography in this film, probably some of the best in the Monsterverse, especially the scene in the Kong graveyard. I loved it. The skull crawler attack, it felt deadly. Speaking of the skull crawlers, they are great threats in the film, and this is probably the only film in the Monsterverse where Kong actually feels imposing. He feels somewhat of a threat. There is a certain menace to Kong in this film, and I really liked that. Now, this film also has a couple of problems. The film feels rushed at times. The editing is very choppy, and whenever something happens, we see a glimpse of it and it cuts to a separate scene. And it, I got irritated with that after a while. We could have explored Skull Island and its inhabitants a little more, but because the film kept cutting away whenever something intense happened, I was getting pulled out. Also, the characters are not really fleshed out. They all have this one personality, and that stays for the entirety of the film. So we don't connect with them, and we don't really care when someone dies. There are a lot of deaths in the film, but we don't care because we don't know anything much about these characters. On that point, the way the film treats some of the deaths in the film, it feels very tasteless. Especially, there is one scene where a character sacrifices himself, and it's played for laughs, and that just feels very jarring. It felt like an odd choice. But coming in first place is Godzilla King of the Monsters. Now, this might be a very controversial pick, but this is what I wanted out of the Monsterverse. Firstly, there is some great Titan action, probably the best in the entire franchise. The visuals and the cinematography are breathtaking, and you actually get to experience the true threat as well as the grandeur of these Titans. You see, like the film explores them on a scale that has never been put on film before. There are a lot of shots in the film that feel like paintings. We get great Titan versus Titan action, and that's throughout the film. The human storyline is surprisingly good. I did not get bored by it at any point, and there are also some touching moments like Serizawa and his connection with Godzilla. I really liked that. Speaking of that, the way they explored the lore of the Titans, it was very intriguing. Adding in more titans like Mothra and Rodan, it was a great decision. I liked how each titan had its own nature. Mothra, the queen of the monsters, she feels elegant, graceful. Rodan, the fire demon, he emerges from the volcano, and when he flies, you see the impact. He is destroying cities when he's flying. Ghidorah. He feels like that threat you need to have against Godzilla. I feel Ghidorah is the best villain in the entire Monsterverse. There is this threat that comes with the character, him being this alpha predator and a proper rival to Godzilla. Speaking of Godzilla, I loved seeing the focus on him in this film. We did not get to see much of him in the 2014 film, but this film gave us more of Godzilla, him fighting titans. We get more of him using his atomic breath. Radioactive Godzilla in the climax was epic. The design of each of the titans was really well done, and I also really liked the sound design. The sound design in the film was really good, and each of the characters got their own individual sounds that distinguished them from each other. Now this film also has a couple of problems. It has some pacing issues. Some scenes feel rushed while others feel a little slow, like the film has come to a halt, especially in the middle section of the film. I did not care about a lot of the human characters, especially the Russell family. Like Vera Farmiga's character, the writing that they gave her, it felt very odd. Like she is one character for majority of the film, and then they suddenly gave her a redemption arc. It felt very out of the blue. I also feel that they could have spent a little more time on Godzilla, like only spend time with him during battle sequences. Don't get me wrong, the battles are epic. Him versus Ghidorah, they get three battles through the course of the film, and they are all epic. But I would have liked to explore a little more of him away from the Titan action. Like just focus on him. But apart from that, this is what I really wanted from the Monsterverse. This film gave me what I wanted. It was epic, it was grand, and this is my favorite film in the Monsterverse. So this was my ranking. I know a lot of people are not going to agree with this, but do tell me your thoughts in the comments, what your rankings are. And if you like this video, do like, share, and subscribe. And stay tuned for more videos like this.